The CRS one, I'm really gonna kind of just give you an overview, and then this one will just be more of a question and answer on certain laws you may have questions about here in the state of Colorado. And like I said, we just did our legal update on Monday, and pretty much every law in the state of Colorado changed as of either July 1st or October 1st. So when you hear the comments like, we only went to school for 6 months or 4 months or whatever, and we're police officers, well, every year we pretty much have to relearn everything because everything changes every year. This book, I bought it on my own, but it's the briefs of leading case laws. Every year there's a new edition, and it just gets thicker because a case law will come out that supersedes all of them. So now all the stuff that we worked off of is obsolete, and we have to relearn it. All the statutes we have to learn. So Colorado CRS has different titles. So Title 12 deals with like drugs, controlled substances, your marijuana, beer permits, liquor licenses, all of those things. We don't deal a lot with these. Code enforcement normally deals with the beer permits and things like that. Medical marijuana, those type of things, we deal with some, but they have their own regulatory. It's from the state that come and check like the dispensaries in Rocky Ford and Los Animas and all those places. We have the right, police officer has the right to just walk into any business holding a liquor establishment and making sure that they're up to their license and abiding by all the things that they have to abide by. So Title 16 is criminal procedure, the rules. So when it talks about peace officers and post certification, so this is where it sets our training requirements, what it takes to become a peace officer, what the coroner can do, what state troopers can do, what wildlife can do. 16 code is where a lot of your animal violations like hunting, fishing, waterways fall. Also, that governs a lot of the procedures in court. So rights of people in custody, plea agreements, probation, juvenile records, procedures, subpoenas, warrants, summonses, divorce, all those things fall in Title 16. So we work in this area with with warrants, summonses, the criminal procedure, and search and seizure. This is our bread and butter criminal code. So these are all our criminal statutes, all crimes in the state of Colorado, what we're charged with upholding, arresting suspects for, what defines criminal culpability. So all criminal offenses have what's called mens rea, so it's the mind. So are you knowingly doing it? Are you intentionally doing it? Are you recklessly doing it? So that deals with what level of crime it is, as in for like you see that in your first degree murders, second degrees, assaults, third degree assaults, all that. Criminal code also sets your affirmative defenses. So why you did something means that unless the state's evidence raises the issue involving the alleged offense, the defendant to raise the issue shall present some credible evidence of that issue. One of them is self-defense. If the issue involved as an affirmative defense is raised, then the guilt of the defendant must be established beyond a reasonable doubt as to that issue, as well as all other elements of the defense. So, but this falls on as us and the DA have to prove in court beyond a reasonable doubt that the person charged is the one that committed the crime, and that if there's any doubt, then they have to be found innocent by a jury of their peers, or a judge if they choose to have a trial by a judge. So this kind of breaks, is just an example. So assault in the first degree. A person commits the crime of assault in the first degree with intent. So they have to intend to cause somebody serious bodily injury or to another person. He causes serious bodily injury to any person by means of a deadly weapon. So with intent to cause SBI, they have to use a deadly weapon. Another different subsection, with intent to disfigure another person seriously and permanently, or to destroy, amputate, or dissemble permanently a member or organ of a body, he causes such an injury to a person. So, or is a big word, or ands, because if you don't have this and this, then you don't have the element, and you can't charge it. So there's C, under circumstances manifesting extreme indifference to the value of human life, he knowingly engages in conduct which creates a grave risk of death to another person and thereby causes serious bodily injury to a person. D was repealed. So E, with intent to cause serious bodily injury upon the person of a peace officer or firefighter, he or she threatens with a deadly weapon a peace officer or firefighter engaged in the performance of his or her duties, and the offender knows or reasonably should know that the victim is a peace officer or firefighter acting in the performance of their duty. So, as you see, majority of statutes in the state of Colorado have that intent knowingly, and you have to prove intent if you charge this. You have to prove that they intended to do that. Title 19 focuses on children's code, so your juvenile facilities. So PYC in Pueblo is the juvenile detention facility we use here. The judicatory procedures, so they have a right to testify on their own behalf. They can have a guardian ad litem. So this Title 19 sets how procedures work for juveniles. It also sets the child abuse reporting. So people that are required to report child abuse, teachers, doctors, nurses, police officers, firefighters, EMTs, dentists, chiropractors, people in position of trust are required by law to report child abuse, and if they don't, then there's ramifications criminally for that. Deal that we need to know, where we work a lot in, is traffic code. So Title 42 is where all your driver's licenses, penalties, license plates, equipment, speed regulations, parking, abandoned vehicles, anything related to a vehicle driving on a roadway, and even to include scooters, toys. It's all regulated under traffic code.
What's HTO drivers?
It's a habitual traffic offender, so somebody who keeps getting tickets and loses their license, and it gets revoked, suspended, or canceled, and then they continue to drive on it. And once they have so many what's called actives, so if you've been caught driving with your license revoked, suspended, or canceled, every time you get caught after it's been suspended, it becomes another active. So, I mean, we've contacted people with like 30-something actives, 40 actives, and a lot of it has changed. So habitual traffic offender used to be arrestable with a $10,000 bond. And what's sad about that is you can be arrested for being a habitual traffic offender, which is a traffic offense, and you have to post a $10,000 bond, or if it's through a bondsman, it's $1,000. So 10% of what it is usually to a bondsman. So a $10,000 bond is higher than a class 3, 4, and 5 felony. So you can commit a felony and your bond is going to be $2,000, $3,000, $4,000. So to be a habitual traffic offender is a worse bond than to commit a felony.
Cause they don't quit.
So it's the same with if you're revoked for alcohol offenses. So for 1, 2 DUIs, a fourth offense on a DUI is a felony. A lot of traffic code has changed in the last year and a half. So there's one part of habitual that you can still arrest on, but like driving on a revoked license, a suspended or canceled denied license is no longer a summons. It's a penalty assessment. So it's just you pay a fine. You don't have to go to court on it anymore. It used to be all three of those were an automatic summons. The only revocations that require a summons to court are for alcohol offenses now. If you're revoked because you have no points, or one of the ones you see a lot is they're revoked or canceled, denied for financial responsibility, so they aren't paying child support. It's just a penalty assessment.
How many times can they get that?
As many times
As many
as
times?
yeah. One of the things that the state of Colorado just passed, they passed 2 bills. They're contradictory of each other. So one bill now eliminates all subsequent offenses. So normally, like, if you were convicted of burglary once, it's an F. It's a felony at a certain level. If you get convicted again, it moves it to the next highest felony. Well, in the state of Colorado, they just now wiped that out.
Oh.
So now there's not a second offense, a third offense, a fourth offense.
So it really does us no good to suspend licenses for child support.
Well, that's even on the criminal side.
Yeah. Well, I work in child support, so.
I know.
No.
But they also passed some new bills that add in there the language of a first offense, a second offense, a third offense. So they passed 2 contradictory bills. So you pass a bill that gets rid of second, third, and fourth offenses, but then the new bills you pass have them in there. So a lot of these bills get shoved through the process, and then now they have to go back and they have to fix them. So, any questions on any laws that you might have questions about, traffic or otherwise? I can pull up our big book here, so if we have questions, we can look in depth. But one of the biggest ones that's changed over the past 2 years is controlled substances. So possession of a controlled substance under 4 grams, so 4 grams is a lot, is considered use, and it's a misdemeanor, it's a ticket. Unless it's fentanyl, then any amount of fentanyl is a felony. But if it's meth, heroin, cocaine, if it's under 4 grams, it's a misdemeanor, a drug misdemeanor. It's no longer a felony unless you can prove distribution. So they have to have something encompassing with the possession to lead you to believe that there's distribution. So 4 grams with a scale in your pocket, baggies in your pocket, large amount of cash, then you can articulate distribution and you can charge the felony. But if it's just somebody walking around with 3.9 grams of heroin, it's a drug misdemeanor. It's no longer a felony.
That's crazy.
So that's and a lot of it, they're trying to get rid of the cash bail, kind of like California's done. So that's what we're going towards, which means pretty much that the only time you'll have a cash bail is if you commit murder. Everything else is you're gonna get out on. It hasn't passed yet, but those are the types of things that are going through the pipe right now. Is they're trying to get rid of cash bond.
Just need more
so
criminals on the street.
It's
Why?
getting,
Why would they do that?
I don't know.
Because were too wishy-washy.
There's a pretty good
I mean,
example
they're
of
so intent on stopping things, but yet here's the consequence if you get in trouble.
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it
so they're
doesn't
trying-
make any sense.
They're trying to decriminalize narcotics is part of it, and then they really just don't want people in prison. They don't want people in jail.
They don't have to pay for those people in
No,
jail.
they just don't
or...
want people in jail because it all comes down to money, but other political issues. I'm not going to get into politics, but I'll just
Right.
leave it at that. That there's,
'Cause
it's all political,
it's
and
Denver.
at the end of the
We
day,
really need to look at who you're putting in office.
there it comes. I mean, there's prime examples of what happens when you do that, right? Look at California.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can pretty much walk in. Walgreens pulled all their businesses out of San Francisco. Walmart pulled their businesses out of Chicago because people are just going in there and shop. That's another deal that's in Colorado Congress right now, is they're trying to decriminalize shoplifting under the amount of $500.
What?
And
So-
who can afford, I mean, in Denver, maybe that's one thing, but down here in rural areas,
So those are the things that we battle in. I mean, we take some grief sometimes about, well, why isn't somebody in jail? Why didn't you take that person to jail? Judge Manley kind of talked about it right now with Otero being closed and Bent County housing them. Well, if Bent County's full, they have to find somewhere else for them to go. So
They're at half capacity.
Where they are now?
Yeah.
Got some of it done.
So,
Yeah.
but the other part of that is when they're full capacity, they want you to prioritize VRA crimes, so victims' rights crimes, your crimes against persons, violent offenses. So they don't want you booking DUIs. They don't want you booking low-level harassments, things like that. They want you to summons and release a lot of things, and so we can understand the frustration, but it's good for you to know that we're frustrated with how things go sometimes too, and it doesn't fall on our there's a lot more at play than our decisions to do that, right? There's laws that now tell us that you can't arrest somebody on that as a ticket, and or things that used to be arrestable are just tickets and not arrestable anymore. So we understand the frustration, but sometimes that gets directed at us, and we're just working off of what the legislature passes and tells us we can and can't do. So it gets frustrating for, I think, everybody involved, because I know there's been times where I've taken someone to jail and an hour later they're walking around and you're like, how did you get out? I'm not even done with my paperwork yet. And so we share your frustrations, but the public also needs to understand that it's above us. We don't make those decisions. So
Did I understand you correctly to say they're doing away with bail?
cash bail, yeah, except for
Okay.
certain offenses. So like California, they've done away with cash bail other than for pretty much murder. So you can bond, you go to jail, you get advised, and you're released with a court date.
So Manley said that domestic violence is an automatic. You go to jail.
Yeah,
Someone
you
goes
have to.
jail.
So there are.
So is there a bond for that too, or do they have
They don't
to
have
stay?
a bond until they're advised by a judge.
Okay.
But we're seeing people get PR bond as soon as they see the judge. It just depends on what the state sets the bond schedule at. So there are mandatory arrests still, violation of protection order, and domestic violence that are mandatory arrests. But most of everything else is a summonsable, except felonies. You can still book on felonies, but even now, when the jails are full, if it's a low-level felony, they want you to utilize long forming to the DA. So what that entails is basically you send your report to the DA, and then they send them a letter saying you need to appear in court, you're charged with a felony, and go that route. So
Wow. So even at that, even though we still have some rules, it doesn't seem like there's much consequence to stress about.
Right.
yeah, that's the frustration,
Yeah.
the frustrating part. I've been doing this for 8 years, and from when I started 8 years ago till now, it's completely flip flop.
Right.
It's, I mean, you could arrest people 8 years ago for half an ounce of meth, and now it's a ticket. And some of it's not even worth.
So if
there's
you
not a
at least
consequences.
write them a ticket, do you take the stuff from them?
Oh yeah, you seize
Okay,
it, and it
at
still
least
goes
they
to
don't get to
court.
take it home,
They
right?
don't get to take it home. But,
Okay.
But like, if you get rid of the subsequent offenses, there's no penalty for doing it again. It's just the same thing
It's the
over
same
and
thing
over.
over and over.
So I don't know. They might know the bigger why. I don't know the bigger why right now. It just doesn't seem like it makes sense for. It seems more that the system is swayed to
For the criminal.
Yeah.
for the people that don't want to abide by the
Yeah.
criminal law. But
Yes.
which, like I said, is frustrating for everybody, and
I know
a
this
lot
probably,
of the time it gets taken out on us because you
Yeah.
get the, well, why didn't you arrest them? And a lot of the times we have arrested them, and it's just they make bond and they're out by the time we get back. So with the jails being full or closed, they want you to only take mandatory things. So like I said, mandatory arrests or warrants, VPO, and domestic violence.
probably not the place, but I raised my kids to follow our rules, and then as they became older, the rules of society. It's kind of scary to think, like, what kind of rules are my grandkids gonna have to follow? Like, there's no consequence. It's like, I guess maybe if we understood why, or
Yeah.
just had a reason, we don't have to like the reason as to why they're making changes like this, but it doesn't make any sense. It makes no sense whatsoever. So it's hard to even try to have a solution for a problem that,
To have a
Well,
civilized
Yeah,
a lot of
to
it
have
falls
a-
into one small area of the state controls the whole state,
Yeah.
right? So,
Yep.
But yeah,
That's crazy.
they look at that as because majority of people who commit that offense are juveniles, and they don't want to put a felony on a juvenile for joyriding. Yes, it's bad, but it's not to the level of a felony. They didn't damage the car, that type of stuff.
so they can borrow my car without permission, and it's not
It's
that
a
big of a deal.
misdemeanor. As long as they bring it back undamaged. If they take it without permission
Yeah.
and they
Borrowing my
They,
car.
It'd still be a felony.
cause more than $1,000 worth of damage, if they take your car and
What
put-
about the cost of gas? Do they include the cost of gas in that?
No, unfortunately.
Darn
But
it.
if they take your car and they change the license plates on it, it becomes a felony. So fictitious plates, damage, using it in the commission of another crime, all change the level of it. But that's one of the things that did they truly do it for the good? Because they don't have a history of changing laws to benefit the victim in the state of Colorado. They've
Okay.
changed it to the other way around, but it does truly make it better because it actually makes it a felony to now, as to say, the courts across Colorado will stick to the sentencing of it. And the other reason they, according to the guy from the Attorney General's office, they included that misdemeanor is because now it's a bargaining chip, right? Because if that misdemeanor doesn't exist, they can't say, well, will you plead to unauthorized use of a vehicle? Because if that statute's not there, then you're going to go to trial on all of them. There's not a plea bargaining chip that they can use. So that was his explanation of it, other than the juveniles. They don't want juveniles to have felonies and that. So CRS changes every day. It changes every year. Definitions change every year. They take words out, put them in. They repeal things, then they recreate CRS to replace it. So every year we're having to do these legal updates. We're having to relearn statutes and figure it out as we go. So we're being educated every year. We have to learn. We have to do stuff on our own time to stay up with the times, so we don't end up what we say is no case law, so you don't become case law. You don't ever want your name in this book.